A little off. So close.
What's up, Buck? I feel like mine was on. Oh, yeah, that's guys. That's Mitch. That's Calvin. I'm Jacob. We're here for a crazy week five review. Fair warning, I'm gonna let most of them talk because they're probably the ones that watched it. I was out of town all weekend, so I didn't find out the scores till even Sunday afternoon. So a lot of these scores are newer to me. So we will start in the ACC. We have Syracuse beating up on Wagner 59-0 as they go into their bye week. We've got Boston College upsetting Louisville at home 34-33. North Carolina.
Is that really an upset though? Honestly,
Boston College is really bad, but I guess Louisville is really. I just think Louisville was that bad. What was the spread? Louisville was a 13.5 point favorite. So that would definitely count as an upset.
Boston College is pretty brutal.
Wait, Boston College lost at home to Rutgers. Okay, that's the kind of team we're talking about here. Wake Forest, Florida State, 31-21. North Carolina beats Virginia Tech 41-10. Clemson survives and beats. Actually, doesn't really survive. From what I heard, they pretty much were beating up on NC State most of the game, 30-20. Duke beats Virginia 38-17, and Georgia Tech shockingly upsets Pitt 26-21 for, I believe, their second win of the season.
Yep.
So, I think the biggest game to start with is Clemson NC State. I did get to watch some of the highlights from that game. It definitely looked like Clemson was a more physically dominant team. At this point, do you guys take Clemson or the field to win the ACC Atlantic?
I think it's still gonna be Clemson. Like Clemson's the team to beat. They will always be the team to beat. Like as long as like their coaching staff's still intact. They have a great coaching staff. Besides this last year, they generally recruit really well. In the ACC, there's not always schools that recruit like that in the ACC. Like you see some of the better teams in the ACC, like recruit like Clemson does. So it's just an example of like just the talent difference. I know I talk about this a lot, but just recruiting is such a big part of the team.
It sucks because I think you have 4, if not 5, of the best ACC teams in the Atlantic, whereas the Coastal is just an absolute mess. So I'm really glad that a lot of these conferences are starting to get rid of divisions because it's really gonna help the balancing. Because like even as not great as Michigan State is this year, if Michigan State was in the West, they'd probably win the West.
It just Minnesota though.
That's what I'm saying. Second place. Maybe they might lose. They might lose Illinois still for the year. But Mitch, what do you think?
I don't know about that.
Well, this Clemson team, I was home for this weekend as I was back from my vacations and actually rested up finally. But Clemson, I mean, this is an interesting team. I was very curious to see how they would play against NC State after their defense got decimated by Sam Hartman, Wake Forest, when they barely escaped out of, Winston, North Carolina in overtime. Yeah, I think it was Winston-Salem. But they got out of Wake Forest in overtime, just barely gained a win. Now here they are against another big team from the AC Atlantic and NC State, and it was close in the first quarter, but eventually they pulled away. And like Stravinsky said, it was more of just Clemson being the more physically dominating team. I mean, they after the first 2 quarters, once it got to the second half, it really just was all Clemson. I mean, it ended up being a 30-20 score. That last touchdown for NC State was a garbage time touchdown, so it was more like 30-13. But Clemson more or less handled NC State, and honestly, I think probably shushed a lot of doubters on the Tigers of people who kept saying that Clemson doesn't have enough impressive wins and that Wake Forest game was definitely a letdown, but now they get this big win at home. Now we're on prime time for 2 straight weeks. Why do we need Clemson on prime time for 3 straight weeks in a row? Can someone explain this to me?
They're gonna be on prime time again when they play the Cuse after Syracuse beats NC State in the next game.
Yeah, I know it clashed the undefeated.
Well, no. Oh, you mean Syracuse and Clemson? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not saying NC State.
And then touch real quick on this Florida State Wake Forest game. Florida State actually played pretty good defense. I mean, holding Wake Forest to 31 points seems to be like a huge accomplishment at this point. So, but I'm impressed by both teams. I think both those teams are pretty good. Do I think that Florida State is going to be Clemson? Probably not, but feels good. All right.
Yeah, Florida State's looking a lot better this year because, like, obviously recent years, because Florida State's usually like a powerhouse in the ACC, like as much as you want to say powerhouse. It's an ACC team, but this year they're looking better.
Exactly.
Step in the right direction.
Yeah, good season so far for Wake Forest and for Florida State. I mean, we're looking at a Seminoles program that hasn't seen the light of day in, well, since Jameis Winston left. Ever since he's been gone, they've barely even afforded a winning record. So I mean, this is dramatic improvement for this Florida State Seminoles team. They made it. I mean, I picked Wake Forest. I actually picked this as my shocker, so I finally got some points on the season. But this was a really good game. I thought it would be a very good game. I thought it would be a shootout. It didn't end up being as high scoring as I expected. But both teams look really good. Wake Forest, obviously, with Sam Hartman. Florida State with Jordan Travis. Both of these teams are very good teams and are going to be tough outs in the ACC Atlantic. And, of course, like you said, Clemson still has to go to Tallahassee. So we'll see how that goes. That will be a very interesting game.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to the Big 12, where we've had some fun stuff happen. Let's start with Kansas State, number 25, taking care of business against Texas Tech, 37-28. Oklahoma State going on the road and finally a good marquee win against Baylor, 36-25.
Getting revenge.
Finally, oh yeah, from the Big 12 championship. Finally getting a win that actually mattered. That wasn't Arizona State. Kansas, after showing the past couple weeks they can win an offensive shootout, showing that they can also win a defensive match, 14-11. Texas beating West Virginia 38-20, and of course TCU absolutely obliterating Oklahoma 55-24. Now let me say this: I picked TCU to win this game. I don't know if I picked it on the podcast, but I picked it on my stat sheet. I might have just not been confident enough to pick it. I don't remember if I picked it.
You didn't.
You know if I picked it? I didn't. Okay, I picked it on my stat sheet.
Only Kelvin picked TCU.
I should have picked it. I shouldn't have been a coward. I cowered it out, but I got cell reception at one point when I was at the lake, and as soon as I took out my phone, I see TCU blows out Oklahoma 55-24. I'm like, oh, I thought they'd win. I think
it's also hard when your starting quarterback goes down, though, especially someone like Jerome Gabriel.
That's true. So, do we think TCU is a legit contender for the Big 12?
I honestly would say that Kansas is a legitimate contender for the Big 12 right now.
That man knows what he's talking about. The Big 12 is one of those conferences. I think the Big 12 has no shot of getting a playoff team in there because they're going to beat each other up. But I think top to bottom, the ACC is better than the Pac-12, and I think it's close to on par with the Big 10. It's not nearly as top heavy. It's not nearly as top heavy. Like the teams at the top of the Big 10 are so good, but I wouldn't say there's a terrible awful team in the Big 12 this year. What, the worst team is probably Iowa State or West Virginia. Even then, I'd just say they're under average. I wouldn't say any of those teams are terrible.
Is there a terrible team in the Big 10 though? There's Rutgers and
Nebraska and Northwestern.
Okay.
AKA the Big 10 West.
I get the point. I wouldn't go that far.
No, Michigan State's probably on par with the West Virginia, I would say.
That's a little probably on par with Wisconsin, let's say that.
If they had a secondary, they would.
I think they're better than Wisconsin at this point. They actually have a good head coach. Wisconsin has lost theirs.
But my point that I'm saying is from top to bottom, the Big 12 is probably the best conference top to bottom. They don't really have a really bad team. So I think
you could say I wouldn't say they're the best conference. You could say that it's the most like the talent level is the most equivalent.
Equivalent competitive to each other. But I would say there's not like a team that's really bad in that conference. So I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I think the conference champion. I think going into the conference championship, I think the teams will have 1 to 2 losses. Whoever's playing in there. But I think right now TCU is definitely a team that can compete. So yeah, that was very impressive. I don't think Oklahoma's terrible. I think Oklahoma's pretty good. Again, it's like Calvin mentioned, it's hard to win when your starting quarterback goes down. But that defense still let up 55 points.
Yeah, they had to absolutely eat up Brent Venables inside, seeing his defense get annihilated for 41 in the first half. We're not even talking about the second half. They gave up. I mean, forget the 41 in the first half. They gave up 27 in the first quarter.
That's almost as bad as what Clemson State did to whoever they played. That was the team that won 98-0.
That's insane.
I think LSU against Southern.
Do you want to go? Do you even want to go to the gym the next day?
No, if I take the next 5 days off and come back, I'm just
go to the mountains.
There was a game. There was a game I think where LSU scored 37 in one quarter against Southern.
That's Southern. This is Oklahoma and TCU, and
Yeah.
They scored 27 points.
Impressive to say the least.
And then Oklahoma State looks good. Definitely an impressive win. I don't know if I'm super impressed with Baylor this year though, from what I've seen thus far.
They're good. They're not
good.
Great.
They're not. Team. They're not the.
They're not the team that won the Big 12 last year.
Yeah,
exactly. You know who is the team that's going to win the Big 12 though? Them Jayhawks.
Kansas.
Rock Chalk. I was doing my helmet. I was rearranging the helmets outside of my dad's gym, and right now on the top you can actually have it as Syracuse versus Duke, which is great.
That's something else.
All right. I was that this week. All right, now we go on to the Big 10. What's happened here? Michigan wins against Iowa 27-14, which I heard it was 27-7, and they scored with 8 seconds left.
Yeah, garbage time touchdown. That was really a 27-7 game.
Decent game, decent win. Minnesota absolutely being embarrassed at home, 20-10 by Purdue.
Not good.
Illinois going to Wisconsin and giving them the business, 34-10.
And getting Paul Chryst out the door, shockingly.
Paul Chryst also fired.
Yeah, I don't see where that came from. I get the argument where it's okay, he's been good, but he hasn't been great. Because he's been they've had really good records consistently for the last 11, 12 years he's been there.
That's what I heard was a lot of people in the program think he's just hit his ceiling and he's not going to get any better from there, and he's been on the downhill.
Yeah, which I guess cut it off before it gets worse. But at the same time, if he's been that consistent, why fire him in the middle of the season?
Yeah, this was a very
That's someone's throwing in the towel if you're going to fire him. Unless that you have an in-house coordinator that will right the ship. I feel like you just stick it out when
they know Matt Rule's not going to last 2 more. Matt Rule's going to get fired for the Panthers.
Oh, he's going to be gone before the end of this year if they keep playing the way they do.
I'm saying they're waiting for Matt Rule to become available.
I know.
Penn State edges out Northwestern 17-7 at home.
Ugly game there.
Ugly game. Before going on their bye week, they play Michigan. The next game will be against Michigan. Maryland beats Michigan State 27-13, and Nebraska beats Indiana 35-21. I don't really think there's too much to talk about. Some teams looked worse than we thought, like Penn State, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Some teams looked better than we thought. Maryland looks decent.
I'm so mad. So mad I didn't pick the Purdue. I picked it, and then I changed it, so I was like, oh wait, Purdue isn't home. So I was like, if it's home, I'm picking it. Sure.
Oh, 100%.
Classic.
What you need?
Classic upset. But I saw it was at
Need the
Minnesota.
phone?
I was a little hesitant. I
All right,
still
very
wanted to
good.
pick them, but I was like, I just thought they did the Michigan State. I feel like they'll be fine. And they were. So.
Anything anyone wants to talk about with the Big Ten? I mean, it was a pretty predictable week, aside from Illinois, but I think Illinois looked pretty good. Watch out for Illinois.
I'm truly convinced that Michigan State isn't going to make a bowl game, but is going to beat Michigan. That's something that I've convinced myself.
See, if we played games on paper, Michigan would win, but rivalries are not played on paper.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that the state team looks bad, but I think Tucker will get enough magic out to beat Michigan.
It's always the bad Michigan team I'm scared of, because they got nothing else.
I know.
They got nothing else.
They put all the chips in the middle.
Yeah, at this point, Dave. At this point, I picked Illinois to be an upset, but I think at this point, on the road against Illinois will be favored. Mitch, you got any notes from the Big Ten week?
I'm really impressed by the Illini. I'm going on the road to Wisconsin and absolutely dominating a Badger team that has a very good duo of running backs. I mean, I've never liked Graham Mertz, but they have two outstanding running backs in Braylon Allen and Chez Maluzzi. And they have done absolutely nothing to help the Badgers this year. And I guess that was the final, I forget the phrase, not coming to mind right now, but I guess I guess that was the final straw for Wisconsin after they just fired Paul Chryst out of nowhere. And then you got just more of the Big Ten West absolutely devouring each other. Purdue out of nowhere beats Minnesota. I was so tempted to take this one, but I didn't because Purdue is so infamous for getting just 30 billion penalties, being incredibly undisciplined, and I was not confident in having Purdue going on the road to knock off Minnesota. But I'm also like, wait a second, Minnesota always has some random letdown game where they just play absolutely like garbage and end up losing at home. And that's exactly what happened. And Purdue also likes to pull off upsets on the road for some reason. I don't get that. But big game for really in the Big Ten West, where there's no clear favorite at this point. I mean, I like Purdue's team, but they didn't. If Purdue actually was disciplined and didn't commit like 30 billion penalties, I think this Purdue team could easily win the West. And Minnesota, they're a good team too. I think they're one of the top teams in the West as well. Then you got Penn State, who looked absolutely awful against Northwestern, fumbling it 4 times and turning it over 5 total times to Northwestern, as Northwestern returned over like 3 or 4 times. Just like, wow, if I'm a Penn State fan, I'm watching this game. He not pretty, which I am not. So.
I'm sorry, Tommy DeVito, you have played decently, but you know what? Garrett Schrader's ugly led us to 4-5-0, but you know what? It's okay. I'm sorry, Tommy DeVito, for being mean to you at the beginning of the season. You just suck. Anyway, moving on to the Pac-12. We have UCLA getting the upset over Washington. I don't even think that was an upset, actually. Technically,
No, it wasn't an upset. Washington was favored.
Washington was favored by 2.5 points, so it was technically an upset. 40-32. USC hung around and played with Arizona State for a little bit before beating them up in the end, 42-25. Utah absolutely annihilating Oregon State, 42-16. Washington State beating Cal 28-9. Arizona obliterating Colorado 43-20, proving that Colorado is the worst FBS team. And Oregon destroying Stanford 45-27. Yeah. Colorado is really bad. 0-5. I know their coach is fired now.
Yep, their coach is gone now too.
Who wants to take that job?
No one.
I don't know. You'd be surprised how many FBS or FCS coaches are like lower.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to take the coaching job if I was Auburn. No, I'm totally kidding. I would totally do that, but still. I mean, just as we see, USC and Utah still look like the top 3 teams. Very impressed with Utah. I know they were against Oregon State, but man, did they kill them. Man, did they kill Oregon State.
I think I picked Oregon State to win that game, too.
I believe you did.
Yeah. Big win. Utah coming up. Utah has 2 games coming up. This really tell us we can win the Pac-12 going on. And then 2 weeks from now, the big one at home against USC. So that's good.
Oregon this year.
They do near the end
On
of
the
season.
road.
Yeah, that's another big test.
Yeah.
I forget when they play them, but they get 2 weeks after. No, they get.
It's like the third or second to last week of the year they get Oregon.
Second to last game. They play them in week 12.
Yeah, I
they
thought
play them
so.
in week 12. But I mean, that's really like away from this week. So I thought it was still really bad, and so is Arizona State, Stanford, and Cal. That's all I got for the Pac-12. Anyone else got anything else for the Pac-12? Break cut and dry.
Not much to say, honestly.
No upsets. No upsets or anything.
Really?
You got anything before we move to the SEC?
How about UCLA though, knocking off the Washington Huskies? Everyone was really high on Washington, saying they're a great team. Of course, when Michigan State started not playing so well, it looked less impressive. And I know this was an 8-point game, but UCLA was winning this game 40-16. They were wiping the floor with Washington. It was not a contest. They annihilated the Huskies, which, as we'll see in our rankings review later, that got the Bruins into the top 25. But this UCLA team was a really good game. Washington, I thought they were overrated, and well, yeah, they kind of got busted in that game. And yeah, USC continues to win. They continue to look good. I still think they're the team to beat in the Pac-12, and Utah also looking really good after losing in the swamp. And then you got Oregon, who got annihilated week 1 and hasn't lost since. So you definitely got a clear top 3, I would say, in the Pac-12 with UCLA rising at this point.
Yeah. Also, Jalen Brunson is still killing us. We all got the Pistons. We all got the preseason.
Oh yeah, shoot.
On the sides, and Jalen Brunson is still murdering us. Oh my gosh! All right, back to the SEC. Our last conference before we go over the rankings. We've got South Carolina beating South Carolina State 50-10. Ole Miss beating Kentucky 22-19, which I still don't know why Kentucky is still ranked. Like, I'll talk about that in the rankings portion. I know you ranked them so high, but they just didn't have any good enough wins. They don't have good wins. Anyway, Alabama defeats Arkansas 49-26 after Bryce Young went down. Mississippi State crushes Texas A&M 42-24. 21-17. They shouldn't be ranked either. Georgia beats Missouri 26-22, and Florida beats East Washington 52-17.
I got.
There's a lot to say. There are a couple teams. This is kind of flowing into the rankings a little bit. LSU and Kentucky should not still be ranked. LSU should be ranked for sure.
Yeah, LSU should definitely not. Kentucky you can make an argument for it.
Kentucky, you can make an argument because they were already rated so high to start the season. But my thing is, they have not won anything. They have just looked bad this season.
They beat Florida.
Bad. Does Florida look that good, though?
Florida's not a bad team.
Well, yeah, but
Florida's
their
quarterback is someone that that's potential through the roof with Richardson.
That's like their best win, though. That's other than that, they struggled to beat Northern Illinois. I mean, didn't play decently against Miami of Ohio. Beat Florida, which was a good win, and then Youngstown State 34-0. But nothing Kentucky has done is impressive this part this year. I like them. I'm okay with them being ranked. They haven't impressed me yet. they just have not looked great to me. But LSU, I'm not happy with LSU. Right? That makes me mad. Calvin, I know you had a lot to say about this conference. What do you have to say about this conference?
So first off, Georgia, they did not look as dominant. I've been talking up Georgia all year, so to see that did not make me feel very good about all the talking up I've been doing, because Georgia has looked on season so far. Besides, with the exception of that game, they've looked unreal.
And last
Kentucky,
week.
I hate Kentucky. And last week. Kentucky, there's a story behind that. I don't really want to get into it. Basically, they got the 5-star recruit over Michigan State last year, and it came down to the wire, and it was really annoying. It ruined my concert night. So that happened. But Kentucky, you lose a superstar head coach, you're not going to be as good. That's kind of what happens. Liam Cohen went back to the Rams. He's their offense coordinator now. He's brilliant. He's a brilliant play caller. Very, very good head coach. Almost rejuvenated that Kentucky. Kentucky was really good offensively last year, to an extent that they weren't in recent years. Backup quarterback starts off a little slow and then breaks off a huge run, showing that athleticism that Alabama has off their bench, of course, because that's Alabama. And there's one more team. Who am I thinking about?
I just showed Aaron Judge hitting a 60-10-second home run.
Oh, he hit it?
Yeah, he hit it.
Yep, Aaron Judge, 62.
Who's the other SEC?
Mississippi State. A&M.
Oh, that's A&M. I can't wrap my head around why Texas A&M isn't better. I just don't. They have obviously.
They're all freshmen. A lot of them are freshmen.
I know, but they've had good the last couple of years. So you think they'd be better than?
I think it's the same thing that Nebraska had with Scott Frost. Everybody keeps talking about them going 8-4, and they just mentally not get over. There's can't get over that hurdle.
They have talent, just once again. They have the best class in the history. You think that they'd have one freshman that's a superstar out of the class, you know?
Watch them beat Bama for no reason anyway. Just a repeat of last season, except now it's in Tuscaloosa.
Conference as a whole for this week. A lot of action.
Yeah, a lot of great action from the SEC. But let's start. I'm going with the first game that Calvin talked about, Georgia, Missouri. I wasn't really even if you guys know, I watch a lot of games at a time, so I always got multiple screens going. This was not one of them until I figured out that they were actually losing. And I decided, oh, what the heck, I'll throw it on. And it was a field goal fest. No one could get in the end zone. Except for Missouri early in the game, who got one, and then just kept kicking field goals, and it was just field goal after field goal. No one could ever get in the end zone. Missouri's kicker, whoever that guy is, he looks like an Oompa Loompa. He's midget, tall, he's 5'10" and weighs 250 pounds. I mean, yeah, that's why I call Alejandro Kirk of the Blue Jays their catcher. He looks like an Oompa Loompa. He's just a little midget, and he's got a big old belly. But Missouri's kicker, he was unbelievable. He was knocking down kicks, 40, 50, 20, 30, didn't matter. I mean, he would knock it down from absolutely anywhere and would not miss. And kept keeping Missouri in the lead until the fourth quarter when Georgia finally looked like themselves, got down the field. Stetson Bennett finally got together, and they were able to score 2 TDs to rally past the Missouri Tigers. But this is now 2 straight weeks where Georgia has looked a little bit shaky and has not really played all that well. And I think their best defensive player is now out for a week or two with some injury. Forget his first name, but the last name is Carter. Big defensive back, I think.
Carter.
Jalen Carter, yeah.
Jalen Carter, yeah.
Yeah, Jalen Carter. He's very good. I think he's one of the returning.
He's the best defensive tackle in this year's draft class. I love draft like just scouting for NFL draft because obviously as a Lions fan, it's the best time of the year.
Yeah, the NFL draft is the Lions Super Bowl, so.
Exactly.
But really, but not an ugly game for the Bulldogs. Still, they survived. Georgia moves on. How about Bama? I mean, they're up big on Arkansas. They're beating them like 28-0. And then Arkansas scored 23 straight, making it a 5-point game, and honestly making Bama fans probably a little bit scared, especially now they didn't have Bryce Young in there and were not playing all that well. And then finally the backup started getting in the groove, and eventually Bama just pulled away. But I like this Arkansas team. I think they got some solid players in Bama. We'll see what happens with Bryce Young, but that's gonna be a huge loss if he can't come back. I mean, it looks like he'll be fine, but any lost time with Bryce Young is gonna be a problem for the Crimson Tide.
Exactly. All right, let's roll into the top 25 here to get things rolling along because don't want this video too long. All right, so we're gonna go with our reaction to the top 25 poll. We have a new number one in the AP poll. And Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson. Which I'm surprised Clemson hasn't jumped Michigan, but you know what? It's whatever. USC, Oklahoma State, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Penn State rounding out the top 10. On to 12, 11 through 15, you got Utah, Oregon, Kentucky falls down to 13, NC State falls down to 14, jumps up 7 spots to 15. Then you got BYU, you got a string of teams that weren't ranked. There's a lot of new teams in the rankings this week.
Oh yeah.
A lot of teams in the lower half of the rankings lost. You got 7 teams in the rankings. TCU, UCLA, and Rock Chalk, Kansas round out 17 through 19. Kansas State jumps up to 20. Washington falls down to 22, and then you got a string of it. Syracuse finally ranked since first time since 2018. Mississippi State, Cincinnati, LSU. I think my only problem is LSU because wow, you overcame a 17-point deficit to Auburn. You had 85 passing yards against Auburn.
You see, this is what I've kind of seen with LSU really all of this season. They look awful in every single first half. I don't know what it is, but every time they play some decent team in the first half, they just look like absolute dog crap. This LSU team has good players. They have a good team. I mean, they got solid players. They have good talent, but in the first half, it never shows up. They look absolutely brutal in the first half. But then when the second half comes, holy crap, does LSU look like a good team again? It's like, where's that team the entire game? You could just play the second half in the first half too. My gosh, you'd probably be undefeated. You probably would have beaten Florida State, not lost on a blocked extra point. So this LSU team, and it remains their only loss. But against Auburn, they immediately got down 17-0 and then scored 21 straight to end up winning it. But it's like, you didn't need to do that. You could have just played what you played like in the second quarter, towards the end of the second quarter, and in the second half. In the first half, you would have blown Auburn off the floor because they suck. So, I think for this LSU team, if they can just get a consistent game, they consistently play well throughout the game, they're gonna be really stinking good. But they gotta get consistent because there's no consistency with this LSU team.
Which, as well, it's like Florida State is now no longer ranked above them. It's SEC bias. It's literally just the AP voters have
that's exactly what it is. Well, it's the best conference, so to an extent, yes, I get that. But at the same time, SEC often schedule cupcake games, which we see obviously Michigan did that this year. Which I'm not saying that is like, oh, haha, you guys. Say that's smart if you want to play in the playoffs. You schedule those games because one, it saves your bodies later in the season, because you guys are playing backups in the second quarter, so your starters don't need to Michigan versus Oklahoma State is like the first week or whatever, just some random combination like that. So it saves the bodies for later in the season. Plus, obviously, you get free wins basically to start off the season. So I'm not saying it's a bad game plan. But at the same time, SEC, just like the talent level in the SEC, and just SEC football is a different type of football. It's obviously ACC comes into a better conference, beats not a great team in that conference, but still. But I get what you're saying.
Rank James Madison Cowards. Rank James Madison. Win against Middle Tennessee State to open the season. 63-7 win against Norfolk State. Back from down 28-3 on the road against Appalachian State. 40-13 win against Texas State. If you're going to rank anybody from the Sun Belt, Coastal's 5-0. You could put them in the 25th spot. Not LSU.
I don't like Cincinnati at 24.
I'm okay with it. I don't hate it, but it's I'm okay with it.
Or Mississippi State. Mississippi State. Yeah.
Florida State, I care down to 25. Heck, Maryland. They look decent. Put them in 25. But anyway, I think that's all for this video because we got to get our pick videos going.
Shout out to the Kansas Jayhawks, ranked for the first time since 2009.
Playoffs, I'm calling it right now.
And shout out to Syracuse.
It's gonna be Syracuse. It's gonna be Kansas. Kentucky's gonna bounce back.
UCLA is gonna come in.
Boom! All the basketball schools. All right. That's Mitch. That's Calvin. I'm Jacob. See you guys later.
Adios.